Heroes arise to challenge fate and lead their brethren to battle. As mortal armies rush blindly towards their doom, the burning shadow comes to consume us all.
Welcome to GameSpot Live. I'm Greg Kasavin here on this most auspicious occasion to talk about Warcraft 3 Reign of Chaos, a game that needs little introduction. Warcraft 3 was announced way back in 1999, at which time Blizzard announced it as a role-playing strategy game, a game with as many role-playing elements to it as traditional real-time strategy elements. Over the years of development, a lot of that changed, and it's now through and through a real-time strategy game and really a true sequel to its predecessor. So if you're used to real-time strategy conventions like selecting units by dragging boxes around them and clicking on places to get them to move and scrolling around and revealing a mini-map through Fog of War and things like that, you'll find them all in Warcraft 3. The game doesn't reinvent the wheel. But that's fine, because the reason why these conventions have been around ever since Warcraft 2 is because they work really well. Warcraft 3 does introduce a number of interesting, if maybe subtle, elements on top of some of the conventions, and these things all work very well in practice and make Warcraft 3 an interesting game from start to finish when you play a skirmish match. In particular, one of the things that Warcraft 3 does is make the maps themselves a lot more colorful, have a lot more action going on around them besides just you and your opponent trying to duke it out. Maps will have computer-controlled characters kind of lurking around, and you could go off and fight them and gain experience levels and find artifacts. This is totally separate from attacking your opponent. In fact, the game really encourages you to get out there very early on in a match and start fighting, start exploring the map, start fighting some of these computer-controlled creatures, and level up your hero characters, which is another new addition to the game. You have these hero characters that are much more powerful than the standard unit, and they gain levels. They can carry items that improve their powers and their abilities, and as they gain levels, they gain powerful abilities of their own, so they bolster all your forces, and they're very useful to have in the middle of a battle. Hero characters were in previous Blizzard games like StarCraft and Warcraft 2, but they were only in the campaign, and you tried to kind of keep them out of harm's way, because if ever they died, you'd lose the mission. But here, if your hero dies, you could just resurrect them back at your base. So the game is really just encouraging you to stay on the offense, and keep exploring, don't just hunker down in your base, and stay out there and have fun and keep fighting. One point of interest about the gameplay in Warcraft 3 is that the scale of the battles is actually pretty small. You don't control that many units at once, so even though you're technically commanding the Orcish horde, it's not really a horde per se. You control maybe a dozen units at a time, slightly more than that, and the population limit that you could have is really quite stringent. And as you get closer to reaching the maximum population limit, the game rolls out what's called the upkeep system, where you start to earn less resources per trip. So basically the game is encouraging you to have as few units as possible at any given time. That might seem really confining at first if you're used to other real-time strategy games where you amass units, but in Warcraft 3, really the point is to control your units meticulously and to really use strategy in order to win, as opposed to just throwing tons and tons of units and overwhelming your opponent. But aside from all that, the game does follow some of the basic conventions. You build a base, you gather resources, wood and gold, and you basically try to upgrade your units and get a mixed force together and take them against the enemy and destroy his base before he can do the same to you. You can do that in either a custom game against the AI or go online and play against other human opponents. Battle.net, Blizzard's online service, has really gone through some amazing changes for Warcraft 3. Most notably in that when you get online, you could just hit this conspicuous button marked Play Game, and that automatically pits you against an opponent looking for a similar game right then and there. You don't have to go through some rigmarole of chatting it up with other players or anything. You could still do that and try to talk with others in the lobby and so forth, but if you just want to get online and play, you can do just that. You can get in a game from 2 players all the way up to 12, include either that many human players or any number of computer opponents as well. Join up in teams and all kinds of stuff. The game ships with about 40 different maps right out of the box and comes with a very powerful world editor utility that lets you make your own. So the value of this game is really tremendous. Probably the biggest appeal of Warcraft 3 is that it has 4 different playable factions. That's twice as many as Warcraft 2, one more than StarCraft. You've got the orcs and the humans back from the previous game, although they're both quite different than before. And the new factions are the undead and the night elves, which are both very interesting. Fans of Blizzard's previous games might recognize some of their units and strategies and tactics and such from other games, like the game's got some StarCraft elements to it, but really these are unique factions all their own with entirely new tricks. For instance, the night elves, instead of having buildings, they have these giant kind of sentient trees that can even uproot out of the ground and walk around and even fight back if they're attacked. The factions are only similar to the extent that it makes sense. You don't have to completely relearn the game for each one. They follow some of those same basic principles in how they build up, how they build their bases and so forth, and which buildings their various units come from are analogous. But beyond that, they really do require different strategies, so the factions are very different in practice. It's quite impressive just how different yet balanced they truly are. Blizzard's revealed a lot of information about Warcraft 3 over the years, but one thing that it's kept pretty secret is the details about the campaign. I wouldn't want to spoil anything, and neither would they apparently, because the story is very, very cool. It's got a lot of very interesting surprises that don't just come out of the blue. They are really carefully woven in. You can kind of see them coming, but when they happen, it's really surprising. The story is brought to life using some really great voice acting and some cutscenes using the actual game's 3D engine. The cutscenes may not look that good, but the actual voiceover is really terrific for the most part and just really brings the characters to life. You'll really grow to care about each of the game's various characters, and you'll play through this campaign in order as each of the different factions in turn. In terms of how the actual campaign plays out, all the missions are really quite different. The mission objectives vary quite a bit. There are a lot of interesting side quests over the course of the thing, and the missions are relatively short, so you're always moving on to the next objective, which makes the whole campaign very addictive. You'll always want to see what happens next. When Blizzard first revealed Warcraft 3, one of the big surprises about the game was that it would use a fully 3D engine as opposed to a 2D engine like games like StarCraft and Warcraft 2. People were really suspicious of the 3D engine. They thought that it couldn't possibly capture the kind of detail and personality that Blizzard games were known for. The good news is that the game certainly does convey all that personality. There's still just a tremendous amount of detail in all the units. Some of them can look a little bit blocky, and it's not the best looking game that there's ever been. But Warcraft 3 does look really great, and it does do everything that a 2D engine has ever done for a Blizzard game. So there's some really nice details in the graphics, like in the aftermath of a battle, you'll see some real carnage in your wake there. It just seems like a real battle transpired there. You'll see the corpses of your enemies, various colors of blood, and all kinds of nice stuff that you'd hope to see from a game that's all about groups of units clashing. It's hard to imagine Warcraft 3 truly living up to its heritage with games like StarCraft and Warcraft 2 behind it. But in actuality, that's exactly what it does. It's at least as good as those games before it and introduces a number of really interesting new features that should make fans as well as new players really interested, and just they'll stick with Warcraft 3 for a really long time. They'll be playing on Battle.net, so will I, and maybe I'll see you there.